tell me what you know about the inciting incident. You may not use that word at all. It comes basically from Blake Snyder's Save the Cat structure, which I've used loosely for years because it's simple. And of course, it's written for screenplays, so you have to be careful about that. I appreciate what Renee has said about not writing a novel like a movie, because it tends to be telescopic, which means that you're seeing it from like overhead rather than experiencing it through the eyes and the perception of a character. So it doesn't seem like a big shift, but I noticed that often certainly when I began writing novels, that was a critique that I got a lot, that I was seeing it telescopically. Does that make sense?
Okay. Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, I've worked very hard to, with fiction, get deeper. And it's actually helped me with my nonfiction as well, because to get to sink down into nonfiction as the stories are being told, and I think there is um, a certain amount of crossover that I think does help with that when telling stories, not telling a story from up here, but actually getting, as Renee says, sinking down in it.
Yeah, that's so good, Gina. Really. That's so good. It strengthens just about anything that we write. It strengthens a letter, a Christmas letter, or whatever we write, to bring it into that point of view that immediately makes it more interesting. This weekend, we talked about, there's Ingrid, I think.
There she is. Yay.
We're so glad you're here. So Ingrid was going to try to make it to Enid this weekend. The weather was crazy. I mean, it poured buckets on us in Enid all day. Once we got inside, it just was torrential. So, and then of course the storm started after that. So anyway, we missed you, but we get it. So we're talking about the inciting incident and how, how we want to move, which really, Ingrid, you've practiced this and you're good at it. Um, we're moving from that telescopic view that puts us outside of a story rather than in the middle of it, which is really what we want. So the crafting and inciting incident is very much like that. And it's so important to know our character, our main character. Because technically, if you don't have, so sometimes I remember starting out with fiction, it was like dead body in the closet. I mean, it was, the hook was like dramatic and okay, whatever. I had to learn, okay, that doesn't, a dramatic beginning, it is, I mean, for a thriller, it, I suppose that might work, but basically you need the world of that character. So you need, because the world is how that character sees. And so there's a book called I Wish You Happy, and her name is Ray, and I'll share little clips of it, but basically she's an empath, which now people are starting to understand that word a little bit, but I did not hear it so much before the last few years. But basically, she is like empathetic on steroids. And it's cute because she saves, like, if she finds a dead bird on the side of the road, she takes it to this little memorial ground and buries it. And, as the very beginning of the story, is set up, she's taking her dead rat, pet rat, to bury it. And so she has the rat in a shoebox. Anyway, so it's cute because there's a lot of showing that Ray really is just so compassionate at her core. All right, so we she's going to a therapist. And oh, is it Doree? Hey, we're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm excited to find out what it's about.
Well, excellent, excellent.
Good.
Well, my name is Laurel. It's
Hi.
wonderful to have you here. We're talking a little bit about inciting incident. So before we talk about, do you write fiction? Are you you are?
Fiction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good deal.
Mhm.
Well, so we are talking about a little bit about the fact that the opening world of the character needs to be from the character's point of view. So there's a cute little story called I Wish You Happy. And the main character, Ray, is an empath. She's extraordinarily compassionate. And so when we know that about Ray, then we know that like it's borderline, right? I mean, it's borderline, what would be extreme? We'll put it that way.
Okay.
You know, finding dead animals on the side of the road and taking them to her little private burial ground might be a little out of the box, just a tad. But when you're writing story, it's so important to have a character like that who pushes the edges, right? She's it's just important to have a character who's kind of out of the box in some way or another. So I think that's one reason that I think this story is so hilarious and that it works. But we know but Ray is so endearing. You know, how can you not love someone who she has a pet rat named Oscar. She's grieving his loss. And so she has him in the shoebox and she's taking Oscar to her burial ground to honor him, right? To bury him and to honor him. So if you were just thinking, all right, here's this hugely empathic person. If you were crafting an inciting incident and an inciting incident totally turns the main character's world upside down. So if you were crafting one to turn Ray's life upside down, let's talk about it. How would you do that?
Definitely involve animals.
Good. Good. Excellent. Excellent. Obviously, there are a lot of ways you can do it, but we're looking at Ray as a character. What would turn her world upside down? Yes.
I think it would probably be watching the incident that killed the animal.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
Chasing the car down the road.
That's so good. Exacting vengeance, maybe, you know?
For sure.
That's good. Anybody else?
Maybe something that she sees or experiences at the memorial place to make it so that she doesn't want to go there anymore.
Oh,
Oh,
I like that.
Oh, yeah.
very
yeah.
interesting.
And it could maybe even turn into a mystery,
Mhm.
depending on how much you go to the empath side,
Mhm.
because say maybe at that burial ground, she starts to learn of what, so I don't know, something that would be a mystery and then she'd have to go solve it.
I
Okay.
love it. Okay, already you're spinning your own stories
Mhm.
based on character. And that's how you do it. That's how we don't need a major explosion. We don't need the city to blow up or even potentially to blow up.
Mhm.
We need an inciting incident that turns Ray's world upside down. And the way you craft the opening or the world, the ordinary world, that she's coming out of, is that you show what she cares about. You show what matters to Ray, and then you turn it upside down. And you guys are already doing that in your minds. You're already crafting your own story. So it's fun. It's really a fun way to craft story. Anybody else? I'm going to tell you what happened. And then, okay, these are all spoilers, of course, but again, this is from the author's point of view about Ray. So Ray's driving along. She's not a real, she's driving, okay, she's taking Oscar to bury him. And Oscar's in on the floorboard of the car. And it's hot, and she's got the windows rolled down. It's unseasonably hot. I think they probably live Pacific Northwest. But anyway, it's very hot. So she's driving along, and a cyclist comes up right alongside of her. And you know, a cyclist normally keeps her eyes on the road, but this cyclist, and you know, she's sleek, and she has all the, you know, the garb of a cyclist. She's got her helmet and all of that on, and she looks at Ray with hate, like with this intense glare of, I hate your guts. Ray's like, whatever, I don't know you, and continues to drive until the cyclist pulls in front of her. And Ray runs her over.
Oops.
Yep. Okay.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. That'll turn an impasse world upside down.
Mhm.
And there is an eyewitness. His name is Mason. And
Okay.
he's watched, he knows what happened. And he knows that the cyclist was committing suicide and using Ray to do it.
Oh gosh.
That,
All these things like, oh,
I know.
Okay, that's good.
It's not Ray's fault anyway. The cyclist turned into her.
It
Oh,
isn't,
gosh.
but for an
Suicide.
empath, she will
Yes.
not accept that, you know?
No.
For an empath wouldn't accept that. She would, that would create a lot of internal turmoil.
Yeah, devastation of killing somebody, and it doesn't matter if it's suicide or not. It's what she did.
Wow.
That'd be nasty.
Exactly. You guys are so good, right? I mean, internal conflict would be enormous. And you're right, Gina. She doesn't believe that it was an attempted suicide. She doesn't believe that at all.
Of course
She
not.
she wouldn't accept it. I wouldn't think
No.
she wouldn't accept it. She would always feel that guilt, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think guilt is the hardest part on anybody. And it's hard to
Yeah.
give it up or to let go.
So good. So good.
Good.
Right? It's a
Wow.
universal, right? And it's amped up because she's so compassionate. Don't you
Mhm.
think? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right. So this is called, okay, this is the story world at the beginning that we know Ray, and we know why it would turn her world totally upside down to run over somebody.
Oh, we know she's already quite passionate. She has an animal. Anybody that has an animal is very passionate.
She's going to have a funeral service for her dead rat. So, yeah. Now the woman lives.
So
You know,
she's gonna be blaming Ray. Ray didn't do it right.
or saving,
Yeah.
mm,
Yes.
Interesting.
or saving.
Or just manipulating. I think
Yeah.
she could manipulate Ray to
Really, because
where even though
yeah.
the woman may have wanted to die, she, you know, for whatever my question as you were talking is, what was the look of hate that she put towards Ray?
Yeah.
Does Ray have some kind of connection to her that Ray doesn't even realize that this woman is going to, you know, that is making it so that this woman wants Ray to be the one to kill her? You know, that she's
be.
going to die. It's like die by suicide or cop. What is it? Suicide by cop or something like that.
Yeah, when
People
they shoot
put
you.
themselves in
Mhm.
places. So that's what I keep going back to, is what was the look of hate about? You would think that it might be resignation or even determination, but hate, that to me is like what Renee calls what does she call it? Like the little mystery box, the box that we hold on to, that we don't know what it means until later in the story, but it's something that kind of stays there, kind of like a thorn, making us think, what is that?
Paradora box.
Yeah,
Gonna
like,
open it.
but I may be looking way too much into this, Laurel.
No, you are not. You are not. It's meant to be a foreshadowing.
Mhm.
But of course, Ray's determined to save her because she's the one who ran over her. So not only does she go to the hospital and sit by her, um, she invites her
It's
home.
a comedy. It's definitely a comedy.
Oh my gosh, it's just so, it is the funniest, sweetest little story. It's very poignant. And of course, so yeah, so the lady, Ray decides the woman is all alone. She's at the hospital and the woman is all hooked up to tubes, but she's alive. And
Okay.
she said, well, I just wanted to check on you and basically, sorry, I ran over you kind of thing. And the woman grabs her hand and whispers, stay. Well,
Hmm.
that is an invitation that Ray is going to take with all the passion and compassion of her heart.
Mhm.
She stays with this woman for hours. Finally, the woman has to be released, and Ray is sure that she has no one, that she's alone in the world, that she's a victim, and she invites the woman to stay in her home
Okay.
instead of going to treatment for attempted suicide.
Yeah, that's a lockdown in a hospital. Come on in. Not come and stay with me.
Oh my
She
gosh.
intercepts because she thinks that's a mean thing to do to a hurting woman. And so she invites this woman into her home, gives her her bedroom. And it isn't until all of these, lovely thoughts of saving this woman just turn sour with the reality that this woman has basically murdered every relationship in her life, right? And this totally does not want to be saved and does not intend to be saved. Anyway,
Is Ray married? I have
no,
a husband that would never share.
right. Okay, so that
He'd drive her up there.
that's so good. That's so good because Ray has to be single at this point. She needs to be a young single woman because, yeah, I mean, there's not any family in their right mind that would allow that. I mean, it'd have to be a very dysfunctional family who'd say,
Right.
sure.
What's interesting to me is that at this point where you say that Ray invites her back to her house and gives up her room and does all of that, my thought is, okay, is this going to be just a contemporary women's fiction, or is this going to turn into a horror film? A horror
Yeah.
thing where this woman is just going to go, she just invited, crazy
wacko,
woman
yeah.
into her house, and the woman's going to end up owning her house and
I
you
think
know,
I think that see already you're spinning story and that means that we're like on the right track. But the thing
yeah.
that I love about this novel, it travels along the line of compassion so beautifully because in the end, and there's in the resolution, which I don't want to spoil it entirely for you, but the fact that Ray took her in did matter.
Mhm.
It did. And it's just that it exposed a really deep-seated fear in Ray that she couldn't save the world.
Mhm.
And so, but the fact that she moved in compassion did matter. And I love that about this story because it would be easy to say, oh, Ray was just a sicko, No, she was a pretty fully functioning little compassionate woman. Yes, she believed a lie, she moved on a lie, she rescued when she shouldn't have and in the wrong way. But that's how we see her character arc come about,
Mhm.
where she begins to say, wait a minute, this, she gets more information about the woman and she
Yeah.
realized that she leaped in. But the thing is,
Without knowing.
yeah, but I love the fact that in the end, it mattered that Ray was compassionate to this woman who was so very, very broken. And so, I mean, I lived in when I was I was in my 20s. I lived with a family. Had been on my own and lived in a little house and actually you guys might be a little surprised, but I'd had kind of a past that made it it made it a little dangerous for me to live alone. And I had run with a crowd that was not unusual in our small town, but it was there was a very strong drug culture, which I hadn't personally done drugs, but I had a lot of friends who had. And it just was not, I was kind of a Ray-like person. It was not really safe for me to be alone in that old environment. There's a place when you're breaking out of an old environment and going into a new one that is kind of, it's a little tenuous, right? It's a little dangerous. So although I don't know that drug dealers would have come for me, there certainly were dealers, and there was an element, a criminal element that I blissfully was unaware of, pretty much. So,
Namaste. Yes.
so anyway,
I'm
met
from Missouri and moved to North Dakota. I see what you're coming from.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
I love that because in a real story, you don't always know what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't always say that it was compassion who led me. I really didn't know the Lord, of course, and I was pretty, yeah, I was pretty,
But the family took you in and,
they did, they
kind of
did.
cleaned up your life.
Well, they offered me a place in their family, and I needed that.
Mhm.
And it was really a precious time. It was really precious. I learned how to cook. I don't know how to say how precious it was to have been given a place in that family. It was really so precious.
Mhm.
Oh, and were they crazy, compassionate empaths? Well, maybe. I remember they invited one family to stay while I was there who totally used and abused them and turned on them, and here they were living in their house, and that was not a happy ending. So I love that about I Wish You Happy, because we do, I mean, extending our hearts and compassion is powerful.
Mhm.
Do we sometimes get into messes? Yes.
Yes.
But don't you kind of love that? Isn't it like there's no cut and dry deal about Ray or about this story? I mean, which makes it so precious to me.
Yeah.
You can
Well,
certainly.
and I think too, the reader's position, kind of knowing this, I mean, we've all been in those situations where probably, that we gave more than we should have and it backfired. And so we're reading it going, oh, no, 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 no.
Thank you for saying that. That is exactly it. I mean, before we try to theorize about theme, I love the fact that it takes a while to get to the real gist, which is exactly that. We sometimes get on dangerous ground.
Yeah, but there's always the woodpecker in the back one. Hello, hello.
Well, and I appreciate you saying, I think that it's true. Tell me how to pronounce your name,
It's Dory.
Dory.
It's, yes, kind of French, wears a little accent, but we don't
I-
do that.
I love Dory. And if
Thank
you,
you.
if I massacre it, feel free to.
Oh, no. I've been Doreen more than anything else in my life until a fish came along. Now I'm Dory.
Okay, well, excellent. Well, she does have a voice of reason in her life, and his name is Cole, and he is the love interest. She works at a assisted living, it's an assisted living. I might be skilled nursing, somewhere kind of in between, probably. So she works in I mean, even her career is based on compassion, right? And it.
Yeah, memory home.
Oh, so funny little the residents, and it's just an environment that can bring in a lot of humor, but also, teach her a lot of lessons and
Yeah,
relationally
compassion.
and also about people, and particularly about saving people. So anyway, when you just put it in a nutshell, you can say, yeah, it's important to draw boundaries. But
Mhm.
what about the journey of learning what appropriate boundaries look like? And I mean, are they always very clear?
No.
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 I am a little curious of how old Ray is and how old the cyclist is, because
Yeah.
like if Ray is a like a young adult, then she doesn't have that much experience, and being like compassion on steroids, that could lead her down one journey. But if she's an older single female, then maybe she has more mothering qualities, and if the cyclist was a younger lady, then maybe it's more of a mother-daughter relationship. And so I'm kind of curious how
Yeah.
old Ray is and how old the cyclist is, to see how Ray taking her in, how that relationship, like, is it like a mother-daughter, is it like sisters? Is it friends? Like, how is that compassionate saving relationship uh like how does that work out?
Can you see how important it is to craft carefully, even the
Mhm.
ages of your characters?
Yeah.
Yeah, very important. I wouldn't say sisters because, for one thing, Kat, who is the woman who is living with her, the one she ran over, can be very mean. She can just slice and dice Ray in her own home, sleeping in her own bed. So but I wouldn't call it sister, but they're in similar ages. Kat may be a little bit older. Kat could be a little bit older, but I think the impression that I get reading is that they're about the same age. But Kat has been married, and
And
of
she's
course,
still
Ray
compassionate.
has never. Yeah. So anyway, and it's cute because Ray imagines Kat's husband is wearing this wife beater t-shirt and being really mean and controlling, because that's of course what Kat implies about her husband. And yet when Ray meets him, he's kind and loving and has been through hell with Kat, just trying to love her.
Mhm.
And so it's just, but you don't see that until the third act. So, the author lets us believe certain things about Kat, like, well, maybe she is really a victim because Ray keeps saving her and saving her from the authorities, because Cole works with the suicide. I mean, that's his
Person.
job. He's a mental health professional. And Kat should be under, I mean, she she should be in a psych ward.
Sure.
But Ray won't let that happen until later.
Does she run over her again?
No, no, it's a delightful ending, and
Oh.
it's a delightful ending. It's a happy ending. Although, certainly during the climax, the dark moment of the soul and the climax, you think, wow, I don't know how this is going to end happily. How can it? But isn't that perfect? Because it does. But you're left
Mhm.
with that, I think, with that beautiful lesson that our journeys into compassion can be messy. Does that disqualify them? You know? Um, yeah, and do we grow in wisdom because we do move in compassion? And basically, Ray just gets exhausted by Kat. All her
Mhm.
resources are exhausted. Nothing she does is enough. And, the climax is exactly that. Kat won't be saved, no matter how much love and compassion Ray shows. So anyway, I'm just throwing that story out there because it's so strong in character,
Mhm.
and the whole story is built around Ray and her growth as a person. And, all of us are like, do we love Ray? I mean, you haven't even read the book. Do you like Ray? She's so endearing and so engaging, and she's hilarious. She has no personal boundaries
But
at
she
all.
hasn't lived in the year of 2024, obviously.
Well, that the author doesn't really go into that, although I would say that there is she wrote the book having experienced loss from suicide.
Oh, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So can I ask you a question, Laurel?
Yeah.
I know we've talked before about that there are layers when you're building the character, that there are what the character wants on one layer, but
Mhm.
then dropping below is what the character needs.
Mm.
So in this story, I'm just curious, what is it? We see that her want is to save the world. She wants to, be the mother hen that gathers up all the little chicks, whether it's her pet rat or the woman on the bicycle or just whatever. So she wants to save people. What is it that she needs underneath that? I'm just curious.
That's so good. That's so good. It's revealed. So I like the way she crafts this, Gina, because she shows first we get this external about Ray, right? She's so cute. I mean, the the the
Yeah.
guy who has been eyewitness of the suicide,
Mhm.
he goes, I've been calling you Barbie, and this is again a great external description of Ray rather than Ray flipped her blonde hair to her side and gazed into her blue or whatever. No, the eyewitness goes, well, I've been calling you Barbie all along. And she laughs. She goes, you're not flirting with me. And he goes, well, and he looks her over. She hasn't had a bath. Her hair's a mess. She's wearing an old dirty sweatshirt with leggings, and her shoes aren't tied. And he goes, well, maybe a light, what is it? A light in the, no, more like a Barbie with her finger in a light socket.
But
Oh, that's awesome.
who wears a dress and does their hair before they bury a rat?
Well, I mean, he has no personal boundaries, right? So
Aha.
And so anyway, so she's just, but, so that's the
So
external.
cute.
Gradually, Gina, some of these little internal things start to show up. Like, it isn't until, she's having a conversation with Kat, and Kat is like, so, I mean, talk about doom and gloom, and so Ray saves kittens. And so Kat says, the world is basically, going to hell in a handbasket. And Ray says, well, at least there are kittens.
That's true. We're always saying you can't be, down the whole time.
But
Something has to bring
question,
her up.
she begins to question, maybe kittens aren't enough to save the world. And, so all along, Gina, you see this gradual revelation,
Mhm.
Ray, of what she wants, which is she doesn't want pain in the world. She wants to make sure that the world doesn't have pain. And that's the
Mhm.
title. She goes to this little lake, and she will hurl stones into this lake and say, I wish you happy. I wish you happy. All these people in her life, I wish you happy. But at the very end, I mean, she finds this stone, she can barely pick it up. It's so heavy. And she kind of totters it into the water, and it plops in the shallows, and it's Cat.
Mhm.
And she's saying, I wish you happy. And then by gum, she didn't get it deep enough. So she walks into the water, picks up that rock, and hurls it as far as she can into the water. And then she says, I wish you happy. So again, yeah, I mean, her thinking and her lack of boundaries really are painful. But she learns that you can be healthy and still compassionate. And she learns that in a number of ways, through her relationships, through Cole, the boyfriend, the love interest. And gradually you just see that, okay, what does she want? Well, she wants the world to be happy. But basically, she's afraid that if she doesn't give her life for the happiness of others, the world is going to fall apart. And so her final takeaway is she matters as much as everybody else.
Love that.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That is
It-
beautiful.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So, that gradual crafting is very artful. And in what you look at, just as a fun little story, it's really artfully crafted. And that's why I love to teach from it, because it's totally character centric. And it's crafting a story on the basis of that character and her growth. And of course, you can have a negative character arc. You can have any kind of character arc that you want, but you decide, right,
Mhm.
on what that if that character is going to change in a positive way, or
Mhm.
or not. Maybe she's gonna go the other way and say, you know what, I got burned. I've been burned more times than I can count. I'm just not going to care anymore. That
She's
would
an
be
angel.
What's that?
I said she's an angel. If she can keep that compassion all the way through the book and to the end, she deserves to be happy.
We're rooting for her. I agree. We're rooting
Exactly.
for her.
You
We're
are.
rooting for her.
We do. And the thing is, that's so important for a main character. They can be as flawed as they can be, but you want a main character that you'll root for, that you're like, yeah, go Ray. Or like you guys were saying, when when she goes and offers her home, to this woman, like, no, don't do it. Ray.
Which one needs to go to the hospital?
No, maybe she's an ex-murderer. We don't know.
Oh,
Why?
this
We
is
don't know.
true.
We don't know anything about Kat, and
No.
neither do Ray. So anyway, but there is a little bit of backstory that's quite hilarious with her parents, and it's unveiled on the phone, and also in Ray's internal dialogue, and it is hilarious because basically she she has never lived up to her parents' expectations, and is basically considered a loser in the sweetest way possible, right? Because her parents are very logical and analytical people. They've been saving for her to go to medical school. But it doesn't matter that she doesn't want to go to medical school. And they're not giving her the money until she does. But anyway, it's sweet and poignant, and it does give you a little bit of an understanding why really Ray has so much self-rejection, which is why she just has no boundaries at all, because she doesn't really think she matters.
But yet she'll take in this suicide person. That says a lot for her. It really does.
It does. She's definitely a heroine. And she's funny and flawed, and she's just the kind of heroine that you love to read, and that, as you all have said, you love to root for.
Yeah.
So think about that. I mean, I'm going back now over Gatekeeper and trying to add in some of these really strong elements to Giselle and how she sees the world. And is she heroic? Is she flawed? Does she make really stupid mistakes, even though she has someone who loves her who says, don't make this stupid mistake? But she knows better. And I love that, because that's actually a universal for all of us.
Oh, yes.
On the deepest level, change does not come easily. Sorry.
No, doesn't.
Because when people confront us, and this is what Gina was talking about, when people confront the hidden layer of us, it's the layer that we do not see. We don't. And we're like, you're wrong, I'm right.
Yeah.
And that needs to be like in your face in the story. Because unless a character is resisting change, there's no conflict. You won't
There's
have
no story.
No, there's no story without conflict. So it has to be strong internal conflict, and it has to be strong external conflict. And generally, the external conflict is pressing on the inner, right? So, I mean, running over a person who's basically using you to commit suicide. Enormous setup for wonderful, thick, gooey conflict. Inside and outside. So
If she's compassionate, she ought to suggest that the girl try a truck the next time.
yeah, it is interesting that she chose Ray, isn't it? So
Yes.
like you guys were saying earlier, those little mystery boxes, yeah, like why did she choose Ray? Oh, she's cycling along. Yeah, it's an interesting question. The fact that we can't answer all the questions right away is so good. It's so appealing for a reader. Readers are smart. They want to be entranced, engaged in a world that they're like, oh my gosh, I love this woman, but she's nuts. And she is heading for some major issues, which of course she goes right into the middle of. Any questions, or what do you think? Is this helpful to look at a story from that point of view?
Yes.
Yeah, really helpful. And I can't help but think of just what you're sharing with all these things that are such a visible element to finding out her character.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure there's the internal side, like you mentioned with her parents, but what I thought of was there was a session at WriterCon maybe 2 years ago where Bob Sayans was talking about some of the challenges in converting a novel to the screenplay.
Yeah.
And he said that there were times where he would have to, he'd create a character to actually ask the questions so there was dialogue because, in a movie, you can't see the internal.
Right.
I'm like, oh yeah, that could be really fun to play with in fiction because you can do that. You
That's
can
true.
have a character or a situation draw out those internal elements where they become, in a sense, seen if you're
Yeah.
trying to do more of that. Because I know I tend to be very almost inward, and I could rely on those inner thoughts, but I'm alone all the time. So that's like what I have. But the thought that with fiction, at least, you can play with that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it seems like the different characters all draw out a different aspect of who she is.
Yes, Ingrid, that is
Mm,
absolutely
good.
right. And they can be kind of minor characters, but they're very productive in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, productive. That's good. They're there for a reason.
Yes. And I think you're right, because your musings are so rich, Ingrid. And what you do is, you just develop a character to say some of those things.
Right. Yeah.
Because sometimes, I mean, internal dialogue is so important, but you can get too much.
Mhm.
And that's when you need a character and just make an out of the box character. Like this little
Yeah.
one in nursing home is hilarious, Nancy. And anyway, she dresses in evening gowns and basically just tells Ray,
I love that.
yeah, I mean, it's just so you're right. She is like a show don't tell,
Mhm.
and it breaks some of that internal dialogue. Because if we got too much internal dialogue with Ray, you could lose some of the pacing,
Sure.
True.
and there's so much fun and humor in those other characters because they just say whatever they want to say. I mean, they don't have any filters,
Oh,
which is great because
Yeah.
Ray has a lot of filters.
Ah,
yeah.
I like that. Hmm.
Aha.
Isn't it interesting that she crafted that? Okay, so Ray has all these lots of filters because, she should do this, she shouldn't do this, all of that. She's in a nursing home and works in a nursing home where there are no filters.
No, there aren't, and they're funny.
I love what you said though, Ingrid, about how, because Chris and I will talk about this sometimes when we get back from going to movies. We'll come out with movies and we start dissecting the movie. Well, why was this or what was that? And we start doing that. And we've had those conversations where we've said that character had to be there because that character had to help pull out what was really going on within, because sometimes we'll be like, and Chris is really good at this, where he'll just say, well, we could have just lopped off that character. They didn't need that character. They didn't need this person. They didn't need that. But we've had those conversations, like you said, that there are characters within our stories that are their job is to show another side or to draw something out of the main character. And I love that because then that, of course, then brings more conflict. So I love that. That just makes me think we've had those conversations that just kind of makes me think about, my story and what I'm working on and what is the job of the different characters and what are they pulling out of the main character, which I think is really good because it's not always just the antagonist. It can just be that side character. It can be the ally. It can be that, these different people that are,
Yeah.
it creates great, great scenes, great conflict, great conversations, dialogue of just what's really going on within the main person. So
Yeah.
That's good.
And for me too, I care differently
Yeah.
on which characters are involved, with what they're revealing. So
Yes. Yes.
I like that.
And you don't really know, I mean, you don't really know what some characters are going to say, which is part of the beauty of fiction, because you could outline all you want to, but what if this character just insists on saying this instead of that? And that, it just is, it's part of, we try to carefully craft a novel, but there are times that it's just going to go out of the box. And it's kind of fun that way, It said, it's not boring anymore. You're like, oh, here comes so-and-so,
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah. Oh, Laurel, you are filling my bookshelves. You're like, this is another one I gotta read.
I love it. I was telling the writers group this week, I was like, I should get a cut from the sales of this book.
Yeah,
Because
you should.
I mean, by
Yeah.
the end of the workshop, there was like, we love this book. I was like, I'm gonna have Carrie Ann King, I think that's her name, say, hey, love your book. Need a cut.
Yeah. I've been selling it for you.
What was the name of the book's title again? Because I want to go read it now.
Yeah, it's called I Wish You Happy. And
Okay, I thought that was it.
what
Okay.
all of us want for our novels, right? We want our novels to be like this. So I think, there used to be this, I was probably before I started writing novels, when there was a conflict or a controversy about whether stories were plot driven or character driven. Well, you can answer that. Which stories draw you? They're the ones that are character compelling, because the action makes sense and it matters. And of course, we don't all read the same kind of genre. I mean, I read thrillers when I first started getting back into reading fiction, and then moved to other genres. I really enjoy women's fiction now because I love kind of introspective, relational kind of stories, and those are very, big in women's fiction. But yeah, I mean, I love fantasy too, but what is it that crosses the line between genres? It's character,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
I mean, why would we plow through Lord of the Rings, all three of them?
More than once.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, way more than once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way more than once. And even like I love Leif Anger and Virgil Wander. I've used that book to study and to teach from because the characters are so rich. Peace Like a River has really good characters. He's very kind of he has a little bit more of that introspective kind of, but his books are so beautifully crafted that I learn from them, but I wouldn't learn from them if I didn't love the character.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So that's, and as far as structuring, I don't know, Gina, I'm really just kind of playing with this whole thing of totally learning to structure the novel from that point of view, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I had a question for you, Laurel. When you write your inciting incidents, I'm sure you come up with the idea, because I think of the inciting incident like a slingshot. It's with the pulling back it's kind of the pulling back of the story, and it's the release of the story, because it's from there that then the character begins to move, whether both in the scene and in the subtext as well, in their, in their character's arc, but also in the, the action of it. But I'm curious, do you write your inciting incident, and then as you go through your story, do you end up going back to it and refining it and adding in your themes, or adding in more of that, what the character really needs versus what they want? Or do you start at the beginning and do it? I'm just curious about your process.
That's a really good question. And if I was way more analytical, I could probably tell you that. I count on the fact that if I fill my my mind and my heart with good literary stuff, somehow it's going to spill out. So I've been a pantser, but of course you can't write quickly being a pantser, so I had to quit that. But so I know
I feel that.
never get a novel done. But so I know some elements, Gina, that work. I know some things that should happen when. And so now I'm learning to be from that character-centric. So Giselle, she wants to leave home. She's sick of that home mess. It's boring. She's young. She's never seen anything outside of the inn. And so she's like, I'm out of here. I don't need to be here. I don't like my mom. I don't like really anybody. So anyway, she's going out. She's joining a camel train because they travel at night, and gets abducted by runaway slaves who are going to sell her in the next city.
Yeah.
So technically, that's the inciting incident because it does. I mean, she wants to leave. Hey, she's leaving all right, but she's leaving as a slave. So it totally does it totally turns her world upside down.
Yeah.
Never seen a world outside of home. And so obviously there's a lot of things that are opening up to her, but they're opening up to her with the eyes of a slave, which is as a big theme of the story. So did I do that on purpose, Sheena? I don't know. I can't remember.
No, I get that. There's a bit of it, and I know some of you well enough to know that I think that we've got a few what I like to call intuitive writers, where you just kind of feel it. You feel when something's missing, or you feel when you need something else, or you feel when it should happen. So I totally get it. You probably feel it.
Well, but it is an informed choice, Gina.
Okay.
And it has to be an informed choice because you can be a pantser, but if you know nothing about structure, you know nothing about storytelling and what makes for a good story, you can pantser all your life and not write a good story. There are elements of craft that are essential.
Oh, sure.
That some of us are more analytical than others, but we have the common ground that we all have to know this stuff. We have to know it, and then from then we can create and be artistic as we want to. But you read any story that's a marvelous story that engages you, that changes you, that you remember, and I'll guarantee you the elements are the same.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Which is kind of comforting for a pantser because you're like, okay, so I don't have to be totally driven by my intuition. I can know there's a framework and I can use that framework. And if that framework stops, I mean, if I start moving out too far outside of that framework, my story's going to suffer. And so I want to always get better, but I know that, yeah, there's certain things that have to be in place or it's not going to work.
I'm a pantster.
Are you? you?
Yes,
Well, we feel like this is kind of a true confessions moment.
it is. But I do use a map on how the structure's going to go and everything. And I take a lot of classes and I try to remember that. But yeah,
Yeah, we're all different, but it's so
yes,
marvelous.
we are. But you're right. It's taken me like a few years to write this book. Maybe even more.
Well, I think too, and I don't know, Gina's been writing a long, long time, and so is Ingrid. I mean, when you're learning a new craft, like writing a novel is really a new craft, it takes time and it's so multi-layered. Don't you think, Ingrid and Gina, you guys are you're very
Well,
wonderful writers, skilled writers.
and what I like for me, I mean, professionally, I'm in the nonfiction side
Okay.
completely. And even in the ghostwriting side, most of that. So I'm not even, necessarily finding the things, it's someone else's stuff. So this is really challenging for me.
Mhm.
And, there's this part of me that wants to jump in and play. And I'm like, I don't know. And it's taken me, like, how long have I kind of known you guys really from WriterCon the first time? So maybe 4 years. And I have yet to actually commit to anything fiction.
We get it.
I so get it, Ingrid. You and I know we've had conversations. Girl, I am there with you. There is an unraveling that happens when you are so used to writing other people's, when you're ghostwriting. I think I have found that writing ghostwriting, because it's just a different perspective. So then to go into, even if it's your own nonfiction, it gets scary and weird and convoluted. And fiction is just like, it's taken me a while to grasp how to bring all the threads together so that it creates a tapestry, which is the tapestry of the story. It's taken me a while to get to kind of grasp. And there's also the element that I'll speak for myself, because I've been in the nonfiction world for so long, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do whatever I do to do it well. And if I don't feel like it's good enough, or then I'm like, oh, I got to go back to the drawing board. I got to, I mean, that's just for me. So it has definitely been a process. I'm right there with you. But I know what you finally end up settling on and doing is going to be just really glorious and beautiful and well done. And we'll be like, Ingrid, why did it take you? Right?
Well, we know why it took a long time.
Thank God you finally got it here, because this is amazing.
Yes.
No pressure.
No pressure. No, I'm just saying that I mean, I totally get it. We're hard on ourselves with that. But then I know that when you finally decide on a project, it'll be all those years of the ghost writing and the nonfiction writing, all of that. It's just gonna, put you even farther ahead for, your own projects. So,
yes. And let me say that you both have huge advantages. The whole nonfiction is based on clarity, right?
Yeah,
it's true.
Clarity. And so you'll find a way to translate that into storytelling, because people think it's like this playground. Partly you want to have a playground. I started with Julia Cameron's in morning pages, and they helped. Yeah, and I wrote poetry a lot at the beginning and did some things that were out of the box as far as creating with words, right? So that helped to get me out of the box. But the idea that it's like this, that these pantsters just come up with an amazing story is just not true. It's we
Mhm.
all are in that place where we give ourselves permission to create.
Mhm.
And that creative thing, it's like, what? I'm the only one who decides what happens here? What? Else is not telling me what should happen. I decide what should happen.
Mhm.
So it's just we're all there, but you guys have a huge advantage with you understand flow, you understand pacing, you understand so much. So just remind yourself of that as you write fiction and give yourself permission, certainly, to play and to not do it well, which is very hard.
Why,
When
thank you.
you have, well, because you have such strong editors, you are, I mean, both, if you've written for a while, and I wrote nonfiction too for a long time, your internal editor is so strong. And you just have to say, I'm sorry, but you
It's
do
cool.
not have permission to speak.
You know what you don't have when you're in the newspaper industry?
Is that where you were?
Yeah, that's where I was for
Good.
5 or 6 years. Anyway, problem with it is, and I kept saying, I'd have somebody come back to me and say, you can do it this way, or do it this way, or do it this way. And I always thought, no, in newspaper reporting, it's never my do it this way or do it that way. It's the truth. It's nothing but the truth. It's also, he said, she said, he said, she said. And I got tired of that because I thought, what if somebody turned around and said in a really khaki voice, I wanted to remind because people don't always say everything nice and polite when you're interviewing them. So I wrote a children's book. That's where I went.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Well, I am a believer. I do pray for you all that, this gift on the inside of us is large. It belongs into a large community that is spanned, you know,
Oh, yeah.
generation after generation after generation. It's a worthy calling. And so, yeah, we
Yeah.
want it to be fun. We know that part of
Yeah.
it, but we're still going to work at it and we're still going to be together because, I love writing momentum. I love the heart of writing momentum. And that is we work better
Mhm.
together. We just do. There's just no
Mhm.
way that it's a solitary craft. It's just not. I mean, you
Mhm.
have to do a certain amount of butt in the chair, like Renee says,
Mhm.
but then it has to see the light of day. And that's
Right.
through people who love words and who love stories. So
Mhm.
that's one of the biggest reasons that I'm here, other than loving Chris and Gina. I believe in the mission. So
Thank you. We love you too, Laurel. We were
Yes, we
always
do.
so excited when Laurel was going to join us. We were like, we want Laurel to
Yay.
come join us.
Yeah,
We want
yeah.
Laurel on the team.
Good.
well, you
Yeah.
guys, as we get ready to do next week, if you would, you're always welcome to email me, or I don't know how that works for sure, Gina, but to get questions about, like, on the second week that we talk about something, that's the time that if you want to try something out for us to read together, it's a perfect time to get feedback. So if
Right.
there's a
I
little
know.
that you want to write and then let us read together and give feedback, I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect segue from, introducing the concept and then actually doing it on the
Mhm.
second week. So I don't know how that works, Gina.
Beautiful.
I guess I can drop my email, or how does that work?
Yeah. If you
Okay.
want to put your email in the chat, and it will next
Yeah.
week's also be on, we'll continue on inciting incidents.
Yes. My plan for Writers Roundtable is to introduce a concept that for the first time. And then the second time to totally open it for application. It doesn't always work that way. It doesn't have to. It kind of depends on what you guys want, right? I can give more information about it, but I love the fact that we're a community and we can actually give each other feedback if
Yeah.
we
I love that.
Yeah,
in a totally safe,
environment, yeah.
yeah. I'm just gonna drop this in the chat.
Like when I attended the critique last week, well, I got good feedback.
Yeah,
Loved it.
it was so good.
So good, so
Yeah.
good. I love that. I love that the critiques, and what a great guy to be doing them.
Oh, yeah. Except everybody else joins in. You learn so much.
So much.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Change so much. No,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
It does.
it's
I love
great.
Really good.
Yay. Well, I'm gonna have to get on board with that one too. So, well, happy Tuesday. Each
Thank
of you.
you.
Great
Thank
week.
you, Laurel.